my last video, I talked about how you could theoretically make an album for $0. And today, I'm gonna show you how you can do that practically by breaking down one of the new songs, Back to You, off my new album, Eventually It's Okay. We're gonna go into the DAW, look at how I recorded the guitar, how I tracked the vocals, what plugins I used, what instruments I used, and how I layered everything to get that final sound. We're gonna get into all that good stuff, so stick around, we're getting right into it. Okay, yeah, this is a pretty big project. Yeah, 87 tracks. This is literally the first time I've opened the project since like 2 months ago when I finished it and put it out on DistroKid, so this is gonna be fun to unpack. Now, it will be helpful to have heard the song in advance. I'm putting a link in the description, but it's not necessary. We're gonna just break down the techniques and the plugins I use to get that sound. And to start, it's just one vocal. I don't wanna waste another moment. I don't wanna start this all again. As far as my vocal chain goes, I have some EQ, and I'm not the best at this. I just do the simplest EQ possible, which if you can see here on this screen, I am taking out some of the low frequencies and boosting some of the highs. That basically takes out some of the bass in your voice to make room for the other instruments at the lower frequencies, and then gives some high-end shimmer to your voice when you boost up the high-end part. I also used a CLA Vocals plugin. This is the only plugin I bought for this album. It was recommended by Ryan Tedder of One Republic, who's an amazing producer. On one of his YouTube videos, he mentioned this CLA Vocals plugin. It's kind of an all-in-one vocal processing. It has, basically more EQ, and you can take out some of the lows or boost the lows, same with the highs. It has a built-in compressor. It has reverb, delay, and even some sort of, it's not really a pitch correction, it's more like a widening sort of thing. But it's really nice because you can't really go wrong with it. It really just helps you fine tune the vocals and really pushes them forward in the mix. I know a lot of the times, especially when I have so many instruments, it's hard to get your vocals to cut through. But in this case, the compressor is great. Then we have my go-to reverb plugin. It's called ROM. I got it for free. I don't know if it's still free, but I put this shit on everything, I swear to God, maybe to an unhealthy extent. It's just really good. Sometimes I put on saturator, sometimes I put on delay. And in this song, it looks like I did use Mandolin, which is a pitch correction tool. I think I maybe used them in half the songs, half them I don't. I'd rather just get the perfect take than have to manually correct it, because it's actually a lot harder, a lot more tedious to go into Mandolin. It's a really helpful tool if you got the perfect take, but you just got this one note wrong. It can really help fix it. So just so you can hear it, this is what the vocals sound like without any effects. I don't wanna waste another moment. I don't wanna start this all again. And this is what they sound like with effects. I don't wanna waste another moment. I don't wanna start this all again. So going through the DAW, I'm actually seeing that in the beginning, I also had one clean electric guitar, sounds like this. And you can also hear some sort of birds twittering. This is a free sort of ambient noise that I got from Spitfire Audio. They have this thing called Labs with a bunch of amazing VST software instruments that I used on this album. They have this one called Organic Textures that has winds and birdsong, it's called, and I use that on a lot of tracks on the album. I just wanted to have that overall underlayer of ambience. White noise, pink noise, brown noise, these are all super important things to have when you're making a song. Even if you can't consciously hear them all the time, having this underlayer of ambience is actually really important to getting a full sounding mix. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the verse. It goes like this. I know it's a lot to take in. Never meant to make things so complicated. So the acoustic guitar sort of goes to this picking pattern, which you can hear here. And I also mirrored that with the electric guitar, the same clean tone that we used before. And at the verse, we also enter the drums. Now, one sample pack in particular was really helpful for the drums on this album. It's called Indie Ensemble. I think I got it from Lander, which has a bunch of sample packs as well, but I got it from my friend who had some credits. And it basically has a bunch of percussion loops that I would either chop up, take segments of, or just use or layer together. They had some really nice shaker sounds that I used a lot in the verses, and a nice kick drum that had that indie folk feel I was looking for. And I would layer this with either drums that I programmed myself or other samples that I had. I am not the best at percussion or drums. I'm not great at creating drum loops. So I like to start with a sample at the very least as a bass line, and then add onto it to make it more my own and add more diversity and changes. Now, the hardest part with this verse was having a lot of empty space because the guitar's picked and it sounds so full in the intro to go to the pick stuff. I didn't really know how to keep the momentum still alive. So the drums really help with that. And again, having ambient noise, I have this sort of ARP pad that was just a built-in stock from Ableton. I honestly don't even remember what this sounds like. Yeah, so super weird out of context, but it's just adding a lot of high end to the mix and just helping fill it out so it doesn't feel so empty when the guitar is not playing. Next up is the pre-chorus, which sounds like this.
I might be overthinking, I feel it's the real thing, and I've known it all along.
And here, this is kind of like one of the more full parts of the song. This is where everything comes together. So as you can see, as I mentioned before, I layer in my own drums with the drum samples I was using. And then the bass starts doing a bit more than root notes. It has some passing notes that sound like this. We have a lot more electric guitars enter the mix, like this. So you can kind of hear there, I have an electric guitar that's basically mirroring the vocals. I do that technique a lot when the vocals are sounding a bit thin and I just want to really boost the sound of the melody. I'll have the guitar playing the same line as the vocal melody. So that's a really cool tip that you can apply to your own music. One other cool thing I did going into the pre-chorus to kind of add to that energy is a cymbal swell. This is again from that indie ensemble sample pack, and I kind of use that a lot going in and out of choruses just to either signify motion going in or motion going out. In the chorus, the piano also comes back. This is actually another really cool free VST. It's this, it's called Sign Player, and they have a bunch of free instruments, and they have a felt piano that I used on a lot of tracks on the album. It's called Spindle, and in this case, I kind of had myself just playing the basic chords, but having the root note, the bass note, kind of doing quarter notes to kind of give that driving feel and also mirroring a lot of what the bass was doing. Now, one of my favorite parts of the song is the instrumental section, and I did some really cool things here that I want to show you. It sounds like this. So obviously the main thing here is the electric guitar doing that sort of fill. But one really cool thing I did throughout the album was layering that guitar with mandolin and banjo VSTs. Going back to Spitfire audio again, this mandolin plugin, like literally life-changing. I freaking love it. And maybe it's because I'm not a mandolin player, so I'm not as picky with how it sounds, but I think it sounds super realistic. And when you layer it with the guitar, it just gives that whole like folk feeling to it. It feels like you have, you know, like the quartet sort of surrounding the microphone. You got someone on mandolin, you got someone on guitar, you got someone on banjo. So really layering those at different octaves too. That's another key that I should mention. Like if the guitar's at one octave, then maybe have the mandolin like an octave up and the banjo an octave lower, because that's really gonna create, again, a full sound. You can also hear going into it that there's this slide guitar that almost acts as like a swell or a riser. This was from an amazing sample pack I got on Splice. It's by Chapman. I learned about it through this really cool YouTube tutorial channel called Make Pop Music. Shout out to them. I was able to download a bunch of different slide sounds that I was then able to pitch down or up into whatever key I wanted. And it really, throughout the album itself, like adds a lot of feeling in that really nice slide tone that I can't necessarily do on my own. Now here's a bonus tip for you that is really cool. I heard it first when I was listening to Shawn Mendes' new album, I think, but right before this big part, there's almost a vacuum where all of the energy gets sucked out, and then there's a riser. But it isn't your normal riser. It's actually, at least from what I was hearing, a pedal steel guitar, but reversed. So what I did, not in this song, but in a few other songs, is instead of a riser, I would take the pedal steel sample that you heard, and then I would reverse that clip and just play that, and it creates this amazing effect that I really, really love and think it's really cool, really unique. And it looks like on top of the pedal steel, I also had a harmonica, which again is from that Chapman sample pack actually. So it's just holding out the root note. Also in the Nathan Chapman pack was the Dobro, which is a very cool instrument utilized in a lot of folk instruments that obviously I do not have access to, I can't play. So it's nice to have sample packs that have these sort of sounds. It sounds like this. So it's very similar to the slide in a lot of ways, but again, it's a different tonality, a different texture. So that's about it. That's a very brief overview of how I produce Back to You. If you're interested in more types of these videos, I would love to break down, other songs from the albums, because there's a lot of other cool techniques, a lot of cool other free plugins and VSTs that I think you could learn from. So let me know if there's a particular song on the album you would like to hear me break down. Again, this is an album I produced basically entirely for free. Obviously, I had to already have a mic and stuff like that, but even with the equipment I was using, it was relatively cheap. And again, it's all about layering an octave. That is the biggest takeaway you should take away from this video. And I can go more in depth on how I do vocal stacks, on how I do acoustic guitar stacks in future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're so inclined, I would love for you to check out Back to You and Eventually It's Okay, my new album in its entirety. I promise it's well worth it. I really poured my heart and soul into it, and I'm super proud of it, and I think you'll find it's worth listening to, and you can learn a lot as a musician as well. So until next time, my name is Ryan Bieber, and I'll see you around.